Hey gang, show buddy Platt here today with a fun little video doing a little something different. Recently I was on my, working on my channel, and I noticed some of my older content. And apparently in 2019 I started a series called Homebrew Experiments where I just kind of worked outside the box, tried different things. Like I did an unhop beer. Basically I went through the whole process, full boil, everything, just didn't add hops. If I remember right, they didn't turn out so well. I think I made like my own version of like a wine cooler. Just a couple little experiments like that. And I got thinking, I probably need to bring that back because I do have a list of just different things I want to try. And today, what we got here, I think, is a perfect example of the experimentation. If you've ever had an ice wine or know what ice wine is, even if you don't, it's what they do with ice wines is if they're growing grapes in colder climates. A lot of ice wines produced in, it originally started in Germany, but in Canada these days. Basically, you'll let the grapes grow all the way through the season, and in the fall, instead of picking those grapes, you leave them on the vine until early winter, late fall, early winter, when you start getting those first freezes, those real hard freezes. And they'll go out in the morning time when it's real cold, and there's a certain temperature range, but usually somewhere in the teens, somewhere around there. They'll go out and they'll pick the grapes, and the water has frozen in those grapes. They'll press them then, and they get more the concentrated juice, more sugar. A lot of people say those wines have a lot more flavor, but you get less juice out of each grape, so they're more expensive wines too. But if you ever have them, they're absolutely beautiful wines. A lot more sweetness and just really a great flavor to them. But again, the amount of effort into it makes them kind of expensive. Well, I got to thinking there's another way to take water out, and that's through boiling. If you've ever made any kind of sauce, you reduce it down, intensify those flavors. A lot of times water, liquid water, what have you use, you kind of drive that out and intensify those flavors. So the basic premise of what we're going to do today is I have here 2 gallons of just generic store-bought grape juice, most likely Concord grape juice, and I've used this to make homemade wines, many times before. But basically, I'm going to take 2 gallons and reduce it down to 1 gallon, and hopefully, we're going to ramp up that pre-fermentation gravity, drive up that alcohol, drive up that flavor, and just see if we can replicate that kind of ice wine flavor by boiling instead of using frozen grapes. So that's the premise of the project. Today I'll just show you through the process, how I'll go through it, and then we'll come back down the line in one of my tasting videos here in a few months when the wine is ready, and we'll see if we get that flavor. But with that being said, let's get started. Let's start making our wine. And the first thing we're going to do, though, is a hydrometer check to see kind of what we're working with in the juice. All right, gang, let's get this started by doing our gravity reading, kind of seeing what's naturally in this juice before we get going. We're looking at 1.0, I'm going to round down for sake, 1.065. If we get to around 1.010, that should give us around the low 7%. So if you think about a lot of wines are in the teens, 14, 15 or whatever, that's about right if we reduced it in half, if we got an exact doubling. So that being said, that looks like, if again we get a double effect by reducing in half, we'll have to see how that works. But anyway, so we should conceptually right now maybe looking in the teens as far as our ABV on this. So with that being said, let's get the boil process started. All right, before we get this boil started, I want to point out something real quick. I have exactly 1 gallon in here because that's kind of our final. And luckily on my pot, and maybe some of yours, or this is something you want to think about, there's like a little line here about 1 gallon. So now I know when I reduce down where I need to hit. So either take like a wooden spoon and kind of mark what 1 gallon is, or know, where you're kind of heading to, because this is very exact science. I don't know exactly how long the boil would be, but make sure you know where 1 gallon is before you add the second gallon. All right, we're just starting to boil, and it is about 9 o'clock, so let's see how long this takes to reduce to 1 gallon. All right, gang, so that took us a little less than 2 hours to reduce down to 1 gallon. I'm going to start to chill this. We treat this like any other homebrew. We got to chill down to get to proper pitching temperature. I'm going to use, in this case, a Red Star champagne yeast. I know this could get up into the teens as far as ABV. And because we're going to ask the yeast to do some heavy lifting, we're going to also add some Fermax yeast nutrient. So let me get this chilled down. I'll do a gravity reading, pitch the yeast, and we'll come back to wrap up. All right, gang, let's wrap up our what I'm going to call poor man's ice wine. I took 2 gallons of just regular store-bought grape juice, they're generally Concord juice. We basically boiled it down to 1 gallon. I did a gravity reading on the original juice before the boil came out 1.065. After the boil, it came out at 1.120, so we basically doubled the amount of fermentable sugars in there. I added some yeast nutrients. This is going to be a lot of work for the yeast, so I pitched in a teaspoon of yeast nutrients, shook the gallon real hard, and then I pitched in our our champagne yeast. Real quick, something I thought about want to do is I kept some of the juice. I want to try it. You know, what flavors are we bringing into fermentation? I want to kind of see, you know, how the boil affected the flavor, traditional grape juice. So I thought we'd give it a try. Just pretty much a similar flavor profile, just vastly more viscous. Yeah, it's still that traditional Concord grape flavor. We do get into, there are hints of some of the darker fruits, you know, your raspberries and blackberries, you know, that kind of vein, but syrupy sweet. But, you know, again, that's kind of what we're shooting for. Now, where we go from here, what we're going to do, I'm going to leave this in primary fermentation for 2 weeks. I'm going to put it into secondary, leave that for probably a couple of months, and then I'll bottle. And probably what I'll do is I'll bottle these in the 22-ounce bomber bottles, probably get about 4 or 5 out of this, probably about 5 out of this batch. And then I'll probably, throughout 2024, kind of like I did with the Viking's Blood mead, every couple of months, or, you know, each time I do one of those homebrew tasting videos, I will taste another bottle and see how it progresses out. Now, in my ABV calculator, if we go from 1.120 all the way down to 1.010, that would get us to 15.6% ABV. That is fairly, you know, that's getting up there to the point where I don't know if the yeast if the champagne yeast gets all the way there. So what that would mean is some of that residual sugar would come through the flavor, you know, come through in the final product. So I'm still looking for a fairly sweet final product. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for Homebrew Experiments, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.